Welcome back to the channel. Today, you are stepping into one strange question. Why did Napoleon lose everything after winning so much? Picture yourself standing in a palace made of victories. Every wall says you were right. Every map says you are unstoppable. But the real answer is far stranger. Napoleon did not lose everything only because his enemies grew stronger. He lost because winning changed what defeat felt like. At first, victory was his language. Napoleon Bonaparte rose from Corsica, entered France torn apart by revolution, and learned something dangerous early. Chaos rewards a person who moves fastest. That was his gift. Speed. In 1796, Napoleon led the French army into Italy. He was young. His army was hungry. His enemies were older, richer, and more traditional. But he moved like a storm. Historian David Chandler called Napoleon's campaigns brilliant because he knew how to split enemy forces, strike quickly, and make opponents feel surrounded before they truly were. Napoleon did not just defeat armies. He defeated their sense of time. What happens when the world keeps telling you your instincts are destiny? Your brain builds a trap. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman described overconfidence bias. It means your mind trusts its own judgment too much after repeated success. Napoleon lived inside that bias before anyone named it. Each victory became evidence. Austerlitz in 1805, Jena in 1806, Wagram in 1809. Again and again, the map bent around him. Historian Andrew Roberts described Napoleon as a man of huge energy, memory, and intelligence, someone who could read reports, dictate orders, and calculate movement at shocking speed. But even genius has a shadow. The shadow is scale. It is one thing to win a battle. It is another thing to control a continent. By the time Napoleon became emperor, his power stretched across Europe like a giant hand. But every finger needed food, soldiers, roads, taxes, loyalty, and fear. The larger the empire became, the more fragile it became. Does that sound familiar? Sometimes the thing you build to protect yourself becomes the thing that exhausts you. Napoleon's empire needed constant victory because it was held together by the belief that he could not be beaten. The moment that belief cracked, everything beneath it became visible. Spain was one crack. In 1808, Napoleon tried to control Spain by placing his brother Joseph on the throne. On paper, it looked simple. Replace a king, control a country, move on. But people are not chess pieces. Spanish resistance turned into guerrilla war. Guerrilla means little war, where small groups attack, disappear, and drain a stronger army. Napoleon's soldiers could win battles and still lose the country. Historian Charles S. Dale showed how the Peninsular War became a bleeding wound for France, swallowing men, money, and attention for years. Napoleon could defeat armies. He struggled to defeat refusal. Then came Russia, the famous disaster. In 1812, Napoleon invaded with one of the largest armies Europe had ever seen. More than 400,000 soldiers crossed into Russian territory. He expected the old pattern: move fast, strike hard, force peace. But Russia did something terrifying. It refused to play his game. The Russian army retreated deeper and deeper, burning supplies as it moved. This was scorched earth, which means destroying food and shelter, so the enemy cannot use them. Napoleon captured Moscow, but Moscow did not give him victory. It gave him silence. Then winter came. Cold, hunger, disease, exhaustion. The army that marched into Russia as a symbol of power crawled out as a warning. What broke Napoleon was not just snow. It was distance. It was logistics, the hidden science of moving food, boots, horses, medicine, and ammunition to the right place at the right time. A soldier can be brave, but bravery cannot eat courage for dinner. Napoleon had won so often by trusting movement. In Russia, movement became death. And here's the twist. Napoleon's greatest strength made his fall worse. Because he had escaped disaster before, he believed disaster was temporary. Because he had rebuilt armies before, he believed he could rebuild history itself. He kept treating reality like another opponent that would surrender. But reality does not surrender. It accumulates. Lost horses, empty stomachs, angry nations, dead sons, humiliated kings. Every victory created enemies who were learning. Britain kept funding coalitions. Prussia reformed its army. Russia recovered. Austria waited. Each defeat taught Napoleon's enemies how to survive him. That is another strange thing about winning. You become someone else's teacher. By 1813 and 1814, Europe no longer saw Napoleon as a miracle. It saw him as a problem to solve together. His enemies stopped fighting him separately and began closing in from every side. He was still brilliant, but brilliance was no longer enough. After exile to Elba, he returned for the 100 Days, as if history had given him one last dramatic scene. Then came Waterloo in 1815. The Duke of Wellington held the line. Prussian forces under Blucher arrived. Napoleon's final gamble collapsed. The man who once made Europe move at his speed was finally trapped by timing. Too late, too tired, too surrounded. So why did Napoleon lose everything after winning so much? Because victory taught him the wrong lesson. It taught him that boldness could solve distance. That genius could replace patience. That fear could hold loyalty forever. That a person who wins again and again is not just successful, but chosen. This is the modern mirror. Your life may not contain armies, thrones, or frozen roads to Moscow, but your brain can still build a tiny empire out of past success. A job you were always good at. A relationship where you always got forgiven. A habit that never hurt you until it did. Winning can make you sharper, but it can also make you deaf. It can make warning signs sound like doubt, and doubt sound like weakness. Napoleon's story is not just about ambition. It is about the moment confidence stops being a tool and becomes a cage. Because sometimes you do not lose everything when you are weak. Sometimes you lose everything after you have been strong for too long. And that is why Napoleon was not just standing in a palace made of victories. He was standing in a palace made of victories, listening as the floor began to crack. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.